you so much, ladies, for the opportunity. And it has really been amazing to listen to each and every one of you. And like you're saying, yes, the industry in my itself is just another story on its own, because the industries that I found myself in that instance, it hasn't been easy, but you know what, we push on and got myself where I am thereof. So I think for today, I really just wanted to talk about the platform that I recently just launched on the Couch with Cells, because I'm passionate about inclusions in society. I'm passionate about women empowerment. I'm passionate about the mental and wellness of women in overall. And the intention of the platform itself, really, it was inspired upbringing and myself growing up as a grown-up woman, and all the experiences and that I've experienced through my life journey, really. And over and above that, I've really just recognized that it might have been the fact that this is my purpose, because that's actually how I am actually seeing it in essence. So this is a platform where I'm allowing everyone to just come and tell their real stories, with a hope to say the next person listening to their story, it will really just give them courage to carry on. And the best way to tell is really just to give you guys my own life story. And I think from that perspective, you'll get exactly where I come from, because that is the only better way I can really just express where the passion and everything comes from. So I am a 37-year-old based in South Africa, from a province called Limpopo. That's where I grew up. I grew up without my parents, actually. My mom, when I was growing up, I don't know who my dad is, not that it bothers me that much, but my mom at the time was staying in another a province, and she was actually struggling with alcohol. She was an alcoholic in that instance. Thank God she's not there anymore. But I grew up with one of her brothers, who I would then say he was my uncle in that instant. So my uncle had two daughters. I was the eldest when I was staying with them, and I started primary staying with the family. Everything was okay. I mean, he's somebody that is in the taxi industry, and he was really just doing well for himself in that instance. And what he was, the interest from myself that he had, was that you need to make sure that you empower yourself, you make sure that you go to school. Education is very important in the journey of life. Along as we're growing up, something just changed our world. My uncle's wife was then introduced to some kind of a system. I'm not sure if our some kind of another system, a system in a form of a church in this instance. And when she was introduced to that, we had, all of us had to change everything and how things were happening in the house. From being dictated to how we should be dressing up. Now we are told we can't be wearing pants anymore. Now we are told that we cannot even be watching TV at home. I can tell you about, there's a whole lot of a list that is what was going on in there. To the extent that it started affecting even the relationship in the house, because my uncle did not prescribe to that. But as kids, were then forced into going to the church and making sure that everything around us changes in that way. One of the things that the system was then teaching us as young girls is that you are groomed as a young girl for marriage. You are groomed to then say how a family will be taken to, how as a woman, or when you are married, you should be conducting yourself, or whatever the case may be. So the other thing that you are then taught is that you can't even speak up, especially when men are giving you some level of instruction or whatever. I mean, you can imagine I was still young at the point. So When I was in my matric, finishing the high school in this instance, I found myself having have to now finding a bit of a little bit of a voice. Someone might see it as something that was in a sense disrespectful or whatever the case may be, because one of the things that actually helped me at the time is that it then removed me out of the family that I grew up with. It was not a nice thing, but it's something that I felt that I needed to do for myself. And somewhere at the back, my uncle was actually supporting me without the wife knowing. And because we're not even allowed to go to excursions, school excursions. And I was in my matric, we needed to visit one of the universities for exposure and all of that. She was like, no, believe it or not, because I was saving the money that they were giving me every day. I paid for the excursion. I even ran away, simply just went to the excursion thereof. That's how I was then removed from the family from that perspective. To cut the story short, I ended up staying with my grandfather who was in another province. This is Gauteng, where I'm currently based. And when I arrived here at this point, you can only imagine, I don't have my parents. I don't have luxury of my uncle assisting me anymore. I finished my high school. I need to then go to university. And I don't even have provision, and yet alone to know where I'm going to be staying. It happened, but I became persistent in saying something will come up. And I got involved in so many things. I found a church closer, which was not a system per se, which I used to go to. And I met one of the guys who used to work for the president, who then said, listen, there's an opportunity for a learnership to go do a 6 months course that can maybe give you some kind of a boost. So that's exactly where everything else started. And at that time, it was where the school was and where I was staying. It was a bit far, but I had my cousins from back home, from my other uncles that were staying in the city, in one of the cities where it was actually a few streets from the school where I was supposed to attend. And I requested them to say, guys, can I crash with you? Because there's the opportunity that I got. They said, okay, cool. To cut the story short, their mom came after a few months to come and kick me out. And that's how I ended up at my grandfather's house, who embraced me so much. May his soul rest in peace. And my life changed, gained direction, and during that time, because I had the drive, I had a vision where I wanted my life to be. I ended up in one of the science councils in South Africa, and they gave me an opportunity. I actually used to volunteer going there because I like reading books. So the first time when I went into it's a science council, they've got like a library or an information center where they a support to the researchers in terms of sourcing the information on their behalf on different topics or whatever the case may be. So I ended up there volunteering in the information center. One day when I've done what I needed to do today, I will sit inside all these big shelves. One of the things that you guys must understand is that for me to even be able to see the kind of a library that it was the first for me. And at the time, I was 17, I've never seen a library. So it was such an exciting thing for me to then see so many books. I can just decide today I want to read about this, then I'm able to do exactly that. So when I've done what I needed to do for the day while I was volunteering, I will then pick a book, sit in between the shelves and read a book. And one day, the director of the library called out my name, and I thought because she will just greet me and pass. That day she came and said, Fridah, Fridah, between the shelves. And I said, yes, it was a woman. And she then said, here's an envelope. It was a Friday. Go have a look at it. And when you like it, sign and come back on Monday. And guess what? It was an offer of an employment as a library assistant in that instant. I remember that day, I didn't know what envelope this woman was giving me. I went to the bathroom and I opened it up. And this was just an offer of employment with everything, your medical aid, and all the things that I really needed at the time. And I remember when I got home and I said to my grandfather, I got a job. This man couldn't even believe me because he kept on saying, you are so pushy. I know you. You are this person. He couldn't even believe that that was it. He actually believed me on the Monday when I came back with an access card to say, yes, I'm really working. Guess what? On the Monday when I arrived, for the first time, they're giving me a desk and there was a phone and a desktop there. As a young girl from a Limpopo province that moved a village that was not even developed in any ways, from my first time seeing a computer. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, where am I going to start at this present moment? And and it was just an opportunity. I really just empowered myself and I grew from there. But I always tell this story because then during the time, I had to be a mother to my younger brother at the time, because now I've got an opportunity from that, in that perspective. And today I wanted to share with you about really something that is always passionate in my heart, the mental health of coming out of the system. That is how I always want to tell this particular story. Not specifically about my one, it can be any kind of a system. A cultural upbringing can be a system, an apartheid upbringing can be a system. It doesn't matter a system that you find yourself in. But this is one way that I always tell my story, because it really just takes a lot and it affects you as you grow up. Guess what? I found myself having have to find myself back at the church that I actually grew up in. Not only that, I got married in the, I met somebody that I actually got married to. But now at this point, you can imagine I'm a grown-up woman, and I saw as if the change was evolving or whatever the case may be. But I started dating this guy. The time when we were about to get married, this is one thing that I always tell my story on. The family issue with Fridah, the persona, because as a woman, you are not allowed to work. At the time, I managed to buy myself and my younger brother a house. At the time, I'm a professional, and now even almost finishing up or almost done with my degree. And I'm a specialist in one of the engineering organization. I left the Science Council and I was growing at the time. And one of the things that came about there was that his family kept on saying, how are you going to deal with this kind of a woman? Because one of the things that you are not allowed to do is to even speak up. Women are not allowed to stand on the pulpit, speak, preach, or do anything like that. Most of the women that find themselves in that particular system, they are just dying inside because they can't express themselves. They are just sitting in there. They even know what to impact to their own daughters. Today, I'm a mother to a boy and a girl, a 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And when I got into that space, I thought to myself, okay, I thought, because my husband understood the person that I am, and maybe this is an opportunity for me to actually say to this guy, what is wrong with a woman being able to buy herself a house, to be a professional, to empower herself, to go and work? What happens if this man passes away tomorrow? What am I going to be as a mother and as a woman in this particular instance? But to cut the story short, I was not really well accepted. I guess they just tolerated me in that instance. But I ended up getting married to this guy. And you know what? One of the things that I've learned out of that is that when you're growing up inside a system, there are certain principles that are instilled within you. Because though at the time when I was dating my husband, I actually that he would actually understand, and we had a level of understanding in this instance. But the one thing that I've learned is his upbringing has actually affected him from a certain perspective. Even myself, I have subjected myself to a system that allowed me to lose who Fridah is, what I stand for as a person. And that has really affected my marriage so much, because at the time I was at the tip of my career. I'm actually growing now, finding myself in a position even at work, and working for one of the state-owned entities, and I'm growing. And guess what? When we first met, I'm not this person now, because I'm actually empowering myself, growing and all of that. And now I'm ahead of him. That on its own, because society that we were in, because that's how I actually look at it, the system that we're in, it was actually a problem to then say, uh, a woman can be earning more money like you. A woman can be having being at managerial or leadership positions in that particular instance. Though at the time you couldn't even express that to myself, but it affected our relationship so much that I took a stand at some point to say, I'm going to remove myself from this system. Because now, and this happened when I had my daughter, who's right now 4 years old, to say, is this the system that I want to raise? Because right now I'm able to contextualize issues and see them, and be able to then say, this is not what I stand for as a person. Not only that, now I'm going to understand to even have a relationship with the superior being called God. I don't need a doctrine. I do not need somebody else to come and define it for me. And this was coming from the fact that if God was able to carry me through all these years, why do I have to confine him to me having a lipstick? Because putting a lipstick is a taboo. Have to put even makeup is a taboo. The way I was dressed, you'll be judged. I can't even have in this way where I can cut it off, because it was actually abomination of God. Then I needed to then put it to a stop, to say, my husband, this is not the environment that I want to be in. I lost myself along the way, and I cannot keep on pretending. Over and above that, I just felt that if I am going to be raising kids in this system that, even more than anything, perpetuates and a patriarchy in this instance, to say you are superior than me, I am not able to do this, I'm limited to be able to do that. I don't think that is what I need for my daughter. And at that point, when I took the decision, you can imagine it just created a whole lot of issues within my marriage, where we actually separated at the time. And I took a stand to say, I cannot raise a daughter that then says, it's okay for a man to actually dictate to you. It's okay for a society to then say, you cannot express yourself, you're not allowed to speak out, you are not allowed to dress the way you feel. And over and above that, I cannot say to my son, it's okay to go and get another person's daughter and subject them to the same thing that I, as a mother, allowed throughout my life. I couldn't have done that in this instance. And that was my articulation to my husband at the time. And I actually said, if there is something, even during that time, our separation, I'm doing it right, is then to say, I'm sending a message to my daughter to say, you cannot allow yourself to actually be in a situation that you are subjecting yourself to this particular, you are not allowed to empower yourself and all of those things. Because one day I'm going to live in this world, and how is my child going to be able to stand to this world at which we are living in, not being able to watch TV, not being able to, because then you are told that you're going to go to hell. And over and above that, my child is going to go to school, meet other kids who are wearing pens or earrings in this instance, and you will see them as the devil. And that is actually instilling hate into your kids, and they are to be growing up with that particular a system in that instance. And if I said to even to my own family, if I am going to be making a decision at this point, I'm saying to my son, you are going to be able to treat a woman as your fellow human being who's got interests of her own, who is capable of doing certain things to be able to follow her own God-given purpose in this instance, without somebody dictating to them in that instance. And this is where I was coming from. And from that perspective, I can tell you, this is where On the Couch with Cells was then, every time when I was actually telling a story in a group of people, I started having other women that were actually at the verge of leaving the system itself. I will get inboxes of people that are women that are coming from that perspective, then to say, I was young when I was, because one of the things that the church does, they marry you young, 15, 16-year-olds that were actually being married in that instance. Women will reach out to myself to say, Fridah, here I am, 9 years of my life wasted. I was taken when I was a young girl from the other province, and right now I'm sitting here, I don't even have a plan about my life. Therefore, I even left my husband because he can't even provide for myself and my child. Therefore, I've taken my child to my parents to take care of, because right now I've also taken a decision to say, I am doing this anymore. But where they were coming from was to say, but how are you then doing it? Because the mental effect that comes with that is never easy from that perspective, because then you are disempowered as a human being. Apart from being a woman, you are disempowered of your capabilities and everything else. So it's exactly where, and some of them, because one of the things that the system does is that, remember, you are brought up in a society. You can only relate to a certain kind of people, be your friends and everything else. And some of them, when they take this decision, their parents disowns them. You find yourself being in a point where you are not even able to find friends from the outside the system. Not only that, because you're friends within them, they actually don't want to associate with you anymore. And these are the kind of women that I find along the way. I'm able to say, it is not too late. Look at me. Though I was defiant right from the beginning, but let me give you hope. At least you were able to grow up with your parents that were able to take you to university. Though when after you have then a marriage, you're not able to work or whatever the case may be, it's never too late. You can always find yourself a way to actually go get yourself a job or whatever the case may be, and seek help. For people to be able to raise us and tell their story without a shame, because some of the stories are really in that instance. One of the days I actually got one of the calls from one of the ladies that was actually suicidal during the COVID-19 pandemic when it was coming up, because then she was told that because you used to plait your hair, now this is the rapture. COVID is rapture, and being rapture that it is, you've been doing 1, 2, 3, 4, therefore you are going to hell. And one day in the middle of the night, I get a call from this woman who was saying, there is no point for me to leave. I want to kill myself because everybody around me, this is the spirit at which they are actually impacting on me. So I'm saying, you have, by telling a story, there's somebody sitting somewhere that by hearing my story to say, Fridah did not grow up with parents. She had a dream that drove her and attracted people that were able to actually take her to where she wanted to be. Not only that, she was able to find a voice, find herself, go back to her own self, and still be able to stand. Therefore, that does not mean that you have to actually kill yourself. There is still hope for you to stand up on your 2 feet and ask strength and go to your source of strength and really carry on in this instance. Ladies, I'm so passionate about what I'm talking about. I can take the whole night. And I think that is what I wanted to share with yourself, to say we are capable. And I'm very proud. And to cut the story short, my husband had to go through a whole process to deal with herself. And we are actually working on getting back together. And he's also out of the system. And I'm hoping that as we go through the journey, it will also impact other men that really go up in that particular instance. Ladies, that was my story. Thank you so much for the opportunity.